Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jenna Royal. I am a voting rights attorney and the former voter protection director for the Texas Democratic Party. And so when my friend Liz over here, when she called me and said we needed to get women lawyers together, I said, yes, please. And let's put them to work for voter protection. So here we are. In the past 10 days, we have put together an amazing slate of speakers, people that care about voter protection, people that want to see women lawyers get involved and have a voice in this campaign, because as one of my favorite Texans would say, if you aren't at the table, you're on the menu. So we're going to build our table today. And it is going to start with the amazing Leah Littman and Melissa Murray from Strict Scrutiny, the Crooked Media podcast. They are some of my favorite people. I listen to this podcast every week with my 12-year-old daughter, and it has come up in some of her social studies classes, and I highly recommend, if you ever have questions about what's going on in the Supreme Court, if you ever want to get out your rage about Samuel Alito, these two women and one of their other cohorts does a weekly podcast that does amazing work telling us how to stay plugged in, what we need to be mad at, what we can be happy about, and how it's going to affect all of the lawyers that are on this call. So Melissa and Leah, take it away.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here on this Women Lawyers for Harris call. Leah, I'll let you get it started by introducing us.
Okay, so this is my wonderful co-host, Melissa Murray, who is a professor at NYU and also director of the Birnbaum Women's Leadership Center. I'm Leah Littman. I am a professor at Michigan. And as Jenna mentioned, we are co-hosts of the Strict Scrutiny podcast about the Supreme Court and the legal culture that surrounds it. So in order to kind of introduce this and kick this off, we wanted to cover, I think, a few different things. I'm going to say two, but it's really three. So the two things that we wanted to cover are, first, some of the things to fight for in this election, things that kind of get us fired up. And second, some different ways to help, so that no matter what your availability and your resources, you can find a way to pitch in and lend your talents to this cause. You'll notice we wanted to focus on the things to fight for rather than focusing on the catastrophes and disasters that are to be avoided. But I think Melissa and I kind of wanted to talk about some of those catastrophes and disasters we are attempting to ward off as well, because it would be kind of remiss and out of character for us not to mention those.
So some of the things that are probably on the table if there is a second Trump administration. They call it a second Trump administration. I'd like to call it disaster piece theater, because it would literally be a disaster for so many of us. But among the things that are on the menu is, one, the rescission of provision of medication abortion. We've already seen throughout this year that individuals on the right are really adamant about limiting access to medication abortion. When asked about this today, Donald Trump said that, yeah, everything is open, although it's not entirely clear that he knows what mifepristone is, as opposed to Tylenol or Excedrin or anything else. But he knows that he wants to limit access to abortion. And mifepristone, which is the second drug in the two-drug medication abortion protocol, is a key method for individuals to self-manage termination of pregnancy and to avoid some of the difficulties that we've seen in the wake of Dobbs and the restrictions on abortion in some of these states. In addition to limiting access to mifepristone and medication abortion, the second Trump administration would certainly end health insurance guarantees for contraception and other kinds of healthcare that are absolutely essential to women's reproductive health. They've also made very strong signals toward enforcing the Comstock Act. And if you don't know what the Comstock Act is, it is an 1873 law. It's an anti-vice law that was intended to stop the transmission of quote unquote immoral articles in the US mails. And it's been lying dormant for over 2 generations. But the Republicans have made very clear that if they have a second shot at the White House, they won't need Congress to enforce a national ban on abortion. All they'll need to do is resume enforcement of the Comstock Act. And they can use that as a nationwide ban to keep women from having access to medication abortion and other implements that could be used for surgical abortions, and maybe even limiting contraception as well. In addition to those threats to reproductive rights, in Project 2025, the Republicans have laid out a plan to blow up the Federal Reserve. So if you like a stable economy, buckle up, you might not have one going forward. They've also made noise about an abortion surveillance and a menstrual surveillance program. So it's not just tampons and surgical napkin or sanitary napkins on the ears. Like, they literally want to know what you're doing with your menstrual cycle all of the time. There's some discussion of whether or not children should be forced to do hard labor, like working in the mines. They've also said that they would begin eliminating means-tested nutrition programs like WIC and SNAP, which many women without resources use throughout this country to feed their families. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you read Project 2025, which is a 900+ page manifesto for just the first 180 days of the second Trump administration, you'll see a lot of other truly terrifying and weird stuff, including replacing line employees in the federal government with party loyalists who are, quote unquote, their people. So that's just some of the highlights. There's so much more here. So lots to fight against, but we want to be more hopeful. So Leah is going to highlight some of the things that we can fight for. And one of the things that I'm very excited to fight for is the prospect of the first woman president and the most adorable vice president I think we might ever see in the history of the United States. That's Tim Walz, who is giving me all of the Friday Night Lights vibes. And I would love to see him and his wife, Gwen, in the Naval Observatory as our second family.
So before I say some of the things that we are fighting for, I want to take two just additional beats on some of what we are up against. And I think in some ways, like, what encapsulates the misogyny of the opposing campaign is the entire tampon Tim motif. The idea that there is like nothing as disgusting as providing sanitary napkins and tampons to women, or exposing men to actual like menstruation products. It's a little weird. And then I promise this segment won't go on forever, but I needed to say something about the Supreme Court because it's become a running joke in academic circles, like, oh, what area of law is the Supreme Court going to take a wrecking ball to this year? And what the court has done in areas from constitutional law to administrative law is just act like the world's biggest chaos muppet, upending the law so it's no longer providing even minimal measures of reliability or predictability. So, this is a call full of lawyers. So think about like what the Lokis on the Supreme Court might do to whatever area of law you practice in. They have flirted with employment law, patent law. No matter what area of law you're in, tax law, you are not immune from having your practice thrown into all kinds of nuttiness and disarray based on what the court might do. I also want to note some of the developments during the first Trump administration and some of what Project 2025 is threatening to do to lawyers. Some of you might recall what happened to the lawyers for the undocumented minor women who the Trump administration refused to allow to obtain abortions, after state courts said they could. The lawyers who represented those women were hauled before the Supreme Court when the Trump administration asked the court to show cause as to why those lawyers should not be disbarred or sanctioned by the bars. If you look through Project 2025, there are calls to have the Federal Department of Justice and Civil Rights Division actually investigate schools, private companies, and other institutions for allegedly discriminating against conservatives, by which they appear to mean enforcing civil rights laws that protect historically marginalized groups. These are very real concerns that I think everyone should be attuned to, not least of which include the lawyers on this call. Okay, so that's the laundry list of horribles. Those are good to know, but I promise I am going to try to say some positive things here. So what are some of the things we are fighting for? One of my personal favorite things to think about is the possibility of the first woman president and the first Black woman president replacing Samuel Alito on the Supreme Court. The guy is in his mid-70s. We know he wants to retire. He has been fucking around for the last few years, and wouldn't it be really nice if he found out? Melissa, I listed one of mine. What are some of the things you are fighting for?
So in the same vein, Clarence Thomas has probably defied every actuarial table for a Black man in this country for the last 10 years or so. Wouldn't it be amazing if a Black woman were called upon to appoint his replacement to the United States Supreme Court? And he can just go and retire and have his emotional support billionaire on the up and up instead of under the table as he's been doing now. So that's something. Like, the Supreme Court is very definitely on the ballot in this election. Not necessarily to expand the ratio of liberals to conservatives, but simply to prevent this conservative supermajority from lasting, because Donald Trump is able to appoint successors to Alito and Thomas, allowing this conservative 6-3 supermajority to last for another generation entirely. So the Supreme Court is top of my list as well. But Leah, are there other things worth fighting for? I think we've got some more to name.
We could tick off more than a few. We could have the first female president. She has the potential to take a caregiving agenda across the finish line. Things that would include a domestic workers' bill of rights, guarantees for paid family care, caregiving care, support for gestational and birthing parents, support for families. We could have the first female president sign into law a more permanent child tax credit, which has been in many ways like the most significant policy at alleviating child poverty in this country.
We could also have a president who signs into law even more relief for eliminating medical debt. Medical debt is one of the chief causes for American families to fall into bankruptcy and economic insecurity. To have greater protections for that would be absolutely astounding. We could also have laws and policy that expand access to education, including proposals to provide free college to those under a particular income level. That would be absolutely transformative for so many in this country. What else, Leah?
We could have laws that guarantee those people great jobs, with laws and policies that strengthen unions and labor protections. We could have the first female president sign into law federal protections for reproductive freedom that eliminate barriers that prevent people from accessing and obtaining reproductive justice. As she has said, it's not enough for the Constitution to protect these rights, but instead they have to be guaranteed, in practice in every state. So I think, it's worth pausing to think about what motivates you, because there is so much to do to get this over the finish line. I think we know people are busy, and we want to transition to what are some things you can do, kind of no matter your resources and time. Let's say you don't have the resources of a venture capitalist from San Francisco who has ties to the deep pockets of Peter Thiel. Even if, that doesn't describe you, there's still a lot you can do, no matter where you live and no matter what your constraints are. And some of these will allow you to use your law degree as well. So why don't we just kind of tick through some possibilities? I'll start with a pretty basic one. One is donating. It takes a lot of money to build a campaign staff large enough to do the groundwork and have a ground game in all of the states that need to be a part of the game plan. If you are able to make a one-time donation or become a recurring donor, do that and donate directly to the Harris campaign or the Harris Victory Fund.
In addition to donating in whatever amount is comfortable for you, you can always make your voice heard by doing important volunteer work for the campaign. So that means doing door knocking and leafletting, convincing your neighbors that this is a ticket that they need to get behind and support. And that's way more effective than sending postcards to people in another state. Although sending postcards is great too. That's something we can get our kids and our teenagers involved with doing. But the door knocking, the leafletting, the actual person-to-person, high-touch kind of contact, that's what's going to persuade your neighbors that this is something that is important for them, is important for a community, and ultimately important for our nation. And you can get in on all of this, figure out where to go, how to do this kind of door knocking, leafletting, making calls by going to one of our favorite organizations, votesaveamerica.com, which is Crooked's piece here for the campaign that's deploying individuals who want to volunteer in campaigns around the country to get out the word about this democracy-saving election and how they can help.
And think about, where you might have a kind of natural in or, a natural advantage. I purchased some, basically Laura Ashley clothes off of the internet, and I am driving myself out to the suburbs of Oakland and Macomb County. So I can convince all of the nice ladies in the suburbs that they need to go to the polls and vote for reproductive freedom in this election. And you should also use, your existing networks that you have. I think something that gets overlooked is just mobilizing the people around you, not only making sure they're voting, fundraising, but also get them to door knock and make sure they're contributing as well, whether these are friends from exercise classes, from school, book club friends, work friends, whatever. There are many, many different ways and many different people to get involved.
And right now, the name of the game is getting a lot of new voters registered and out to the polls on November 5th. So a great way to get involved is with Get Out the Vote registration efforts. We need to make sure people are registered to vote. This includes young people, especially. Gen Z, the Zoomers, the youth, they are an untapped sleeping giant of an electorate, and they have the power to absolutely turn this election. And they are totally fired up for this ticket. We need to harness their electoral power, get them to the vote, to the polls, get them excited, and make it easy for them to do this. Tell them how they're going to get there, help them make a plan to vote, make them make a plan to help their friends vote. When we do this, this is how we win. We tell them what the registration rules are. We allow them to tell their friends. And sometimes it's as simple as showing up with a laptop. But even when it's not that simple, if we give them the resources, we can tap into this enormous bank of untapped votes and get this particular part of the electorate out and energized and ready to do this work.
And then on election day, there are a billion different ways you can get involved. Some of these rules and opportunities vary by state. I'm just going to mention a few different ways to get involved in Michigan, where I happen to be familiar with and live. So in Michigan, you can be a poll observer, you can be a party representative at polling locations, or you can be in a boiler room answering questions. On all of these things matter. You know, the poll observers are there to make sure nothing is going awry. You know, they're the people that might call in if someone shows up potentially intimidating voters, or if challengers show up and they are disproportionately challenging certain people when they show up to vote. Poll observers might also be the ones to call in if there are exceptionally long wait times or delays at different voting locations, and clerks can adjust that by either modifying their practices, sending additional employees there, or there are other ways, you know, that they can actually adjust that if the problem is flagged to them. Poll observers and election observers are also really important given the increasing challenges to election administration. You know, in the 2020 election, for example, some of the people, you know, who were poll observers in Michigan were at the Detroit TCF location when there were people who were trying to stop the vote count and essentially organizing, you know, a mass mob to intimidate election workers. This is a very real risk in this upcoming election. And so no matter what you can do, there are so many different ways you can help. And, you know, I think lawyers have an advantage in that we basically spent 3 years learning very strong talk to the manager energy. I know the rules and I'll tell you. And so you can bring that and use that to do some good on election day and after. So we are running a little bit long. I think there are like a few closing thoughts that we both might want to add in. So I'll just start with two from my end. One is that the vibes right now are really good. But vibes don't win elections. Votes win elections, but use the vibes, right, to power yourself up and energize yourself to do the work to actually win this election. Because to win this election, I think we need to ensure a litigation-proof victory, much like 2020, where the margins are such that they cannot be challenged by sketchy lawsuits in court, or they cannot be overturned in court. And so this is an unfortunate reality, but I think when you are looking at polls and thinking it looks all good, the reality is this is going to come down to a few thousand people in a few different states, and that doesn't sound like that much. So it is something attainable, but it's also something that can't be neglected.
So I'll just close with this. I will never forget election day in 2016. My daughter was 9 years old, and I woke her up that morning by whispering in her ear, "Let's go make history." And we went down to our polling place in Oakland, California, to cast our ballot for the woman we thought would be the first woman president of the United States. And I'll never forget the incredulity on her face later that evening when we realized that Hillary Clinton would not win that election. So many of us believed in that ticket. So many of us believed that that was a kind of fait accompli, that it was going to happen and we were going to shatter that hardest and most durable glass ceiling. And it didn't happen. And in fact, what followed was honestly a nightmare that, I can't even put into words. What we've seen happen as a result of the Trump administration, as a result of Donald Trump's ability to pack the Supreme Court with movement conservatives, has been utterly astounding and absolutely devastating for us and for our children. And so this time, I am going to make sure I do everything in my power to secure a victory, a litigation-proof victory. And that means leaving everything on the dance floor, truly. So every vote, every door that can be knocked, every leaflet that can be distributed, it's go time for us, because Donald Trump didn't succeed the first time, but he will not fail twice. This is an election of existential consequences, and we are doing this not just for ourselves, but for our children and for their children. And so I just want to leave you with that. The stakes could not be higher, and the possibilities could not be more profound.
I'm going to just add in one other note for my fellow petty women in the audience, and that is this. When the opinion overruling Roe leaked and when that opinion was finally released, I was pissed as fuck. And I took that and I used that to motivate myself, because I thought, I will not let these fuckers win. I know everyone in this audience, as a lawyer or an aspiring lawyer, you went to law school, you had that guy in your law school class, the one who was, quote, just playing devil's advocate in the sexual assault unit. That guy. That guy
It could
is
have been
JD
Vance, Leah. It could have
Exactly.
actually been JD Vance.
That guy was JD Vance, right? The one literally stalking the vice president and the next president of the United States on the tarmac, like the guy who won't leave you the fuck alone at the gym, the bar, or the grocery store. Do not let that guy become the vice president of the United States, hair's breadth away from the presidency. You want the morning after the election to be able to be running those victory memes in the incels' faces, not the other way around. So I'll leave you with that.
Let's do this. Lady lawyers, this is our time. Let's go.
Thank y'all so much. Again, I am trying my hardest not to absolutely fangirl, because we listen to you every week. You are a really important source of news for us. And so I am so honored that you were able to join us and kind of take us through the Supreme Court. And the thing I love the most about that was action items. What can we do next? So thank you guys so much. I also want to let everybody know how much help Leah and Melissa were in helping us put together this amazing slate of speakers. They have hung in there with us from the very beginning while we were kind of propping up the structure. So thank you both so much. I hope you know that we're best friends now. So I'll be in touch. All right. Well, you guys, we have a really exciting donation that came in. One of our amazing lawyers from here in Texas, Jessica Straley, has made a matching donation of $10,000. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker, but what I would love for us to do is to raise a $10,000 in the next 10 minutes, if we can, to get us up to a total of $20,000 before we even start like the VoPro stuff. That would be amazing. So you can go to www, and you've got to put the www in it, www.womenlawyersforharris24.com. And the very top button is the donate button. You can click on that, and that money is going to go to the campaign. It is going to go to help everybody on the ballot. The amazing thing is when you get involved with voter protection, you help everybody on the ballot. You can be working for one particular candidate or volunteering. Say you volunteer here for the Harris-Walz campaign. Well, guess what? You're helping everybody on your ballot below them as well, because voter protection protects all voters, not just a couple, not just voters of certain candidates, but it protects everybody. So all of the money that you will be donating tonight is going to that campaign. It is going to be going to places where we're going to help make sure that the doors to polling locations are open, that the machines are plugged in, if you live in one of those places where they still use paper ballots and hand counts, we're going to make sure that all of the polling locations have all of the ballots they need, that we've got trained poll workers, we've got poll watchers, that we've got hotlines and boiler rooms all up and active and really well trained and fully staffed by amazing people just like you. These voter protection departments need your help and they need your support. They need your time, they need your dollars, and they need your skills. So let's start with dollars tonight, and we're going to get to oh, I've totally blanked. Oh no, I think I might have run out of words. We're going to get to the volunteering part in a little bit, but I want to introduce our next speaker. She is the Voter Protection and Access Director for the Harris-Walz campaign. Her name is Meredith Horton. I am a huge fan of hers as well, so I am so happy that we finally get to talk to her. But Meredith is going to tell us about the voter protection opportunities that we have with the campaign and why it's so important to get involved. So take it away, Meredith.
Right. Jenna, thank you so much for the invitation. Melissa and Leah, it's been great to get revved up at the top of the call with your contributions as well. And I will say I'm just loving kind of keeping an eye on the participant number here and seeing that number grow and grow. So thank you to everyone on the call for bringing your energy, your spirit, your law degrees, or other related legal professional skills to the cause tonight and for this cycle. So as Jenna said, my name is Meredith Horton. I am the National Director for Voter Protection and Access for the Harris for President campaign and the coordinated campaign. I am so honored and excited to serve in this role this cycle. I've been involved in voter protection work for nearly a decade. In fact, with some of the other speakers on this call that I see will address this group tonight. But I've done this work both in the campaign environment, where my roots are really in Georgia, and also in the nonpartisan side as well. I really believe it is some of the most rewarding, high impact work that I've done in my career. And I'm, of course, super biased, but highly recommend it as an excellent use of your time this cycle as well. I know that on the call, I'm sure we've got some veteran voter protection volunteers from past cycles. And so I want to welcome you all back into the fold this cycle and back into the voter protection family. And also welcome new folks into our family of volunteers, and want to talk to you a little bit today about why it's so important to really get behind Vice President Harris, Governor Walz, and Democrats up and down the ticket this November. We've heard a little bit of that already about what's at stake. And I really want to spend most of my time talking about what we're building on the campaign to make sure that we deliver for Democrats up and down the ballot, and that we, particularly as lawyers and legal professionals, really are engaged in holding our democratic values, our democratic norms, our vision for what a multiracial, inclusive democracy should look like, can look like, when we all pitch in, participate, deliver our vote, and again, hold our elected officials accountable as well. So, Vice President Harris has said before that voting is a fundamental freedom that kind of unlocks all other freedoms. In voter protection, I see one of our central jobs is to make sure that this freedom is unlocked for those who want to use their voice at the ballot box. We know that so many of our rights, including our freedom to vote, including, again, just democracy, are really on the ballot and at stake this election. And so that is why it's really exciting to support Democrats this cycle. We know there's a difference between the two sides. It has never been more clear than ever. We know that we can count on our folks to stand up to the extremists like Trump, like J.D. Vance, who would undermine our Constitution and have told us just that. And we know that in VP Harris, we've got a candidate that believes in a people-powered government and will work for that every single day as president. As senator, she introduced the Vote Safe Act, which aims to expand early voting, in-person voting, no excuse, mail-in voting, and drop boxes across the country, all things that make it easier for people to cast their ballot and have that smooth pathway to the ballot box. The Biden-Harris administration signed an executive order directing federal agencies to promote voting and access to voter registration. Again, like really making sure that our government is working for us and making it easy for us to get to the ballot box and cast our ballots, use our voices in that particular way. And in order to kind of back it up, under the leadership of this administration, they have doubled in the DOJ the number of voting rights attorneys and enforcement staff. So we want to keep that going. We want to do even more, and we have an opportunity to do that in November. And so that's why it's really critical. Among the reasons it's really critical that we win this cycle. So let's talk about what we're building and how we're building the voter protection program. We have already stood up a really robust team at headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware, and in the states. And we are building a program that really does meet this moment, and so we are prepared to respond to it. So right now we have stood up teams in Arizona, in Nevada, in Michigan, in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Virginia, and Maine. And that's just so far. And that is really the presidential piece of this. I see my friend and colleague Caitlin Remmel on the call is going to talk to you about the D-TRIPS program as well. And if you didn't hear your state mentioned, never fear. Our colleagues across the Democratic infrastructure, from DNC to D-TRIP to DS, are all building programs that touch a state near you, and we'll have ways for you to plug in as well. So in the states that I mentioned, which are really kind of, we consider in the presidential, more of our battleground states, we are building programs and building staff. Right now on the campaign, we've got over 200 offices across the country in these states. We've got over 1,400 staff, and we are literally growing and continuing to burst at the seams, even in August. So there will be ways to plug in to volunteer. There are ways to plug in for people who are still looking for jobs, and there's plenty of work to do. Our voter protection teams are also complemented by a really strong legal program. That program has been working since last year to build expertise in the legal landscape in these states to make sure that we are monitoring and resolving issues as they arise. Our legal team has also been involved in nearly 24 lawsuits to date across the country aimed at protecting voters and really using the courthouse to beat back the attempts by Republicans to like just sue for whatever and throw a suit against the wall and like see what'll stick. We're actually doing it in a smart, strategic way that is really voter focused. So know that we've got that team in place. They're with us throughout the cycle. They're with us after the close of polls on election day. We are more equipped than we have been in cycles past to carry this fight as long as it needs to go post-election as well. So my team at headquarters in voter protection will be spending the next 3 months, and like it's wild that we are counting down in that way, but really making sure that we are countering the attacks on our voting rights and that we are shoring up our election systems to make sure they work for our voters. So let me talk a little bit about our program. I'd like to kind of talk about like the 3 elements of our program as for how we organize it. 1, expanding access, really expanding access to the ballot for our voters. 2, protecting elections. And the 3rd is voter education. So with respect to expanding access, the important thing to know is for us, voter protection starts long before November. And quite frankly, it is an endeavor that is going on year-round and should be going on year-round. And then the campaigns sort of like come together, give rise to even more energy around protecting voters. But for expanding access, what that work looks like for us is, again, making sure we're removing barriers to voting and proactively looking for opportunities to expand access to the ballot. And simply put, we are advocates. So that work has been going on and will continue to go on until this race is called, quite frankly. That looks like, 1, building upon the work that has been done from past cycles to make voting easier. So by and large right now, voters do have more ways than ever to vote, largely because of changes implemented during 2020, the COVID years, where we saw like vastly expanded mail ballots opportunities. And many states have maintained those. We definitely have plenty of states that have done some backsliding, and we're working on that as well. But know that there are a range of options available. In addition, we're working in a number of states and to kind of track and respond to issues, as I said, related to access. So for example, in Minnesota, We've worked with tribal communities to make sure that they are requesting polling locations on reservations. We've done that for the primary. We're gearing up to do that for the general, and we'll make sure that that type of access continues. In places like New Hampshire, we're tracking legislation that would make it harder for people to register to vote by requiring proof of citizenship. So literally, you have to figure out how to find and bring your birth certificate or passport to actually register to vote. Personally, like, I don't really carry either one of those things around every day, and certainly not a birth certificate. So we're watching that legislation. If it passes, we're concerned that it could really interfere with new registration, including on election day, which is really important in a same-day registration state, and really watching for the impact on young voters, older voters, transient voters, disabled voters. To prepare, we are mounting a big voter education push as well to make sure everyone knows what the rules are, if in fact they do change. In states like New Hampshire, we're also looking at the age of equipment. So that's a kind of another piece of what we're tracking. So there's older ballot scanners that have seen better days, and we want to make sure ahead of the election that we're doing advocacy in cities and towns to encourage them and work with them to bring on newer equipment, newer machines to, again, make sure that that voting experience is as smooth as possible come the voting period. In states like Georgia, I know my colleague, Representative Syra Draper, can speak to this better than anyone else on this call, but we are obviously regularly watching voter challenge activity. So challenges to the eligibility of voters to cast a ballot. Oftentimes these challenges are made en masse and have very little basis, but of course can create a chilling effect on voters who may be confused about whether or not they're actually eligible to cast that ballot. We are doing work making sure that voters are educated and knowing how to check their registration status, when to check it, and also with elections officials who are receiving these challenges and adjudicating them and making sure they understand what their options are, burdens of proof, just what the rules are for adjudicating those challenges in a way that is fair to our voters. In places like Nevada and Pennsylvania, we're also advocating for mail ballot envelope design. Again, like, we get into the weeds. Y'all might not be thinking about like your mail ballot envelope, but it turns out it's like super important. In states like Pennsylvania, we've seen this cycle, a situation where voters who make simple mistakes in how they date their mail ballot envelope could be at risk for having that ballot not count. Personally, I've probably already made like 5 or 6 simple mistakes just today and would hope that my voice isn't ultimately silenced because of it. So we're working through that as well. Places like Arizona, the state is going to use a 2-page ballot this fall. Again, that's a lot of material to get through and read before you get into a polling location, and can have an impact on just the flow of voting in a location. So we're making sure to be thoughtful around how to prepare election administrators to staff accordingly, how to prepare voters to maybe read their sample ballots early this cycle. So these are all the types of things that we're doing right now, well before voting for the general election starts. In addition, advocating for more early voting locations, times, polling places as well. So the second main element, protecting elections. I think a lot of people think of this as, or I think of this as sort of like that kind of 1.0 voter protection, like the original core activity. Again, we've expanded beyond that, but protecting elections is really that piece where our large scale mobilization of people like yourselves becomes so critical. So we will train, we will recruit, we will deploy tens of thousands of volunteers across the country, as we've been doing for decades with the party, to really protect voters on the ground and as they cast their ballots. The poll monitoring program, there's mention of that earlier, is really that place where if you do this work with the party, you will be credentialed and able to be inside the polling location to really observe the conduct of elections in locations. I have to say it is like incredibly educational. You will learn really like from a front row seat how elections are managed and handled in this country. And it's the type of education that stays with you that you get to then share with your family and friends. It is incredibly valuable both for the campaign and then I think just for individuals as part of our civic duty and civic engagement. So that polling monitoring program really makes volunteers our eyes and ears on the ground for the entire campaign. It is like just a really critical and rich source of information during the voting period. As a poll monitor, you're able to tell us that, to basically give us more information when we get a report of like a 3-hour line in Fulton County. Well, it's a Sunday. Is that 3-hour line because it was a really active Souls of the Polls effort and voters are like psyched to line up to vote for VP Harris, Governor Walz, and Democrats up and down the ticket, and the energy is good? Or is there a 3-hour line that day because 4 out of the 7 polling machines in the location have malfunctioned and the tech team from the county is just taking way too long to get there? Either way, we need to know. And either way, we have a host of levers to pull to basically fix that problem on the ground for voters in real time. And the information we get from folks in polling places is so critical to kind of launching our ability to leverage all the tools of the campaign: comms, data, political, legal, voter protection, etc. In addition to volunteers doing poll monitoring, you can also work on our hotline. So that is a place where you'll be trained in the law of the jurisdiction that you're volunteering in and able to really help voters one-on-one who've got questions about what ID do I need to bring to the polling location? Where do I vote? How late is it open? And sometimes even more serious issues as well. So all volunteers in the voter protection program are also supported by boiler rooms, which I think I heard Leah mention before. So you're plugged into a network that is really supportive. So you don't have to become an expert in, Georgia elections law overnight. Like, we got your back. We'll train you and we'll support you. And the information that you are able to report in travels up through boiler rooms in states and into HQ, and again, gives eyes and ears to the whole campaign to understand what's going on down on the ground. We also have volunteers who will help monitor the count of ballots, potentially certification as well. So the last element of our program I just wanted to mention is educating voters. So this cycle, we all know this voter education piece, I think, is like ever critical. So we are still dealing with mis and disinformation as we have been in cycles past. We are still now grappling with AI and the impact that might have. And so it's really, really critical that voters are able to know where to go for accurate, credible information about where to vote, when to vote, and how to cast that ballot. And through tools like iwillvote.com, which is one of the Democrats' main tools for voter education, with information translated into multiple languages, we are able to do that. Also through the National Voter Assistance Hotline, 1-833-DEM-VOTE, and state hotlines that are being stood up now throughout the country. So we will work really hard this cycle to make sure that our voters know where to go for that accurate, credible information, and are able to cast that ballot and have that ballot count. So I want to close and save time, of course, to hear from the array of awesome speakers this cycle, but really just want to say that voter protection is always, always powered by volunteers. It is one of the biggest joys of those of us who do this work, to bring volunteers into the voter protection family. It is a way to make a really concrete difference in voting and the experience for voters this cycle. And you will walk away part of an awesome family of volunteers and really equipped with knowledge that supports you, your families, and your communities throughout the cycle. So I know Jenna is going to put information either in the chat and on the website about how to sign up this cycle. We really look forward to seeing you all out there, and thank you so much for your time. And back to you, Jenna.
Thank you so much, Meredith. That was everything I hoped it would be. Just a point by point, this is exactly how we do voter protection, and this is why it works. I want to try to make sure that we're respectful of everybody's time. We've got some speakers that have a ton of information for us, and some other speakers that are here to get us jazzed up, tell us why things are important, and tell us what to do. So next, I have one of my dear friends. She was a hotline volunteer for me. Her name is Bonnie Moore, and she is from Dallas, Texas, or Denton, Texas. Excuse me. And Bonnie is involved in college student voter registration, but I wanted her to come tell you a little bit about what her experience is like as a voter protection volunteer, and how it's a little bit different from the other types of organizing that a lot of us have done before.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jenna. I do actually have like 3 different things that I do in voter protection. Number one, I have my students, my Gen Z people up at University of North Texas, and I've been organizing up there to do voter registration for the last 4 years, and have started a group called UNT Votes, and just completed all 13 of the freshman orientation sessions to get brand new students registered to vote, educate them. We've actually registered parents. We've actually registered staff members. It was wildly successful, and we haven't even started the actual school year. So that's my first love. I love dealing with the students and getting them registered and helping them find the tools to actually go vote. Most students don't vote because they don't feel like they're educated enough to know what's on the ballot, how to find out information. And so we not only register them, we give them tools to go find their sample ballots, find their polling locations, and get there and vote. Then October 7th is the cutoff in Texas. So I switch gears and go back to my second love, which is working as a captain on the hotline, which is where I met Jana and Rose, who's also on the call, previous Texas voter protection directors. And it's a phenomenal tool for voters across our state. We have elderly people that call in because they can't figure out how to fill out the stupid envelopes to mail their ballots back. Texas does not make it easy for voters to vote. And unfortunately, the elderly, the disabled, younger people are the ones that are most affected and need our help the most. So all of you lawyers out, I'm not a lawyer, my daughter is, and she was actually voter protection director in Ohio in 2016. I was up there with her during that time. So that was a challenge. But having said that, you all have so much ability and skill and knowledge that we desperately need, not only on the Texas hotline, but all of the battleground states. And if you would just volunteer, you don't have to do it every day, every night, but if you can just volunteer in shifts of 3 hours, your knowledge and ability would, I can't tell you how important it is to be able to just say to a lawyer, hey, I have this unusual issue. A voter has this problem and I don't know the legal answer. You can give us the answer, we can get it to the voter, and we can get them over the line. That's our big thing, is we want to get voters over the finish line and know that their vote actually counted. So that's my pitch for that. And I will give a shout out to Georgia because I worked on their cure team. It was so rewarding, y'all. I can't tell you how exciting it was. So that's my pitch. I'll keep it short. Aren't you proud of me, Jenna? I usually go on forever.
I am. No, you did so good.
But I'm done. I just want to say thank y'all. This is like quite an impressive group of people to talk to. So intimidating. Y'all are intimidating.
Thanks, Bonnie. One of the biggest battleground states that we have is Michigan. And we are so lucky to have so many Michiganders here on this call with us. But today we have one of the highest ranking women in government in Michigan, and that is Attorney General Dana Nessel. And who better to talk to us about the effects of election subversion, disinformation, and how voter protection can fight against it. AG Nessel, all yours.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on tonight. I really appreciate this opportunity. If I sound a little under the weather, I'm kind of struggling a little bit with my first bout of COVID. 4.5 years, I managed to avoid it. 2 thumbs down. Do not recommend COVID. I had to miss that amazing Harris Walz rally that we had in Michigan yesterday, but I think it went really really well despite my absence. Anyway, but I gotta say, I'm watching the screen now. I am either there's a lot of energy. I'm seeing a lot of bouquets of flowers and thumbs up and hearts. So either people are super excited or I'm hallucinating. I leave room for either one. I have a very high temperature right now, but I'm still excited to be here to support Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, and to talk about some of the things that we can do to be helpful. You know, look, I've heard a lot of really exciting campaign speeches, and especially I'm thrilled with some of the mantras that we're hearing from Kamala Harris. And one of the things she talks about a lot is we're not going back, right? And that's something that we all care deeply about. We don't want to go back. We mean that, and we are vigorous about not going back on our hard-won rights and freedoms over the course of many years, many decades that so many of us have fought for. And by the way, no one better to fight than Kamala Harris, because let me tell you something, lady prosecutors get shit done. Am I right? Do you have any lady prosecutors on here? But that being the case, right? I mean, most of the time we don't want to go back. And whether that is, you know, making sure we're not going back on our hard-won reproductive rights or LGBTQ rights or voting rights or environmental justice, the list goes on, right? We're not going back. But counterpoint, hear me out just on this one thing. When it comes to criminal defendants and their ability to violate court orders and threaten judges and prosecutors and witnesses, could we just go back a little bit, maybe, because like, I'm old enough and I've been practicing law long enough and I've been a prosecutor long enough to remember when those people used to actually get their bond violated, and then a funny thing would happen. They would get remanded into the custody of the court, and they would sit their ass down in jail, and that's where they would wait until their cases were disposed of. So when can we go back to that time? Because I thought that the criminal justice system worked a whole lot better during that particular time. I'd kind of like to go back a little bit to that. And call me crazy, but I want to have somebody who is our nominee, and I want to have somebody who gets elected to be our next president of the United States that also respects court orders and also doesn't threaten judges and prosecutors and sheriffs and election workers. And it would be really nice to know that we're going to have that sense of normalcy and that you don't have people threatened in the criminal justice system just for doing their damn job. And I think that is something really important for us to talk about. You know, again, there are just you know, certain things that we should ask for at a president of the United States, right? Things that we have now with Joe Biden, things that we'll have again with Kamala Harris, but things that we certainly will not have in a second Donald Trump presidency, didn't have in a first Donald Trump presidency. Like, call me crazy, but you know, I like it when we have presidents who enforce the law and not violate it. I mean, that seems like a really low bar, right? I like my presidents when, you know, they typically get requests to commute or to pardon convicted felons sentence. That's fine, but not when our presidents are convicted felons, right? I mean, there's a difference between those two things. I like my presidents, you know, when they've aggressively in their careers prosecuted sex offenders, not when they are sex offenders, right? Just again, this is a low bar. This is a low bar, but unfortunately for the Republican nominee, he can't quite get past that threshold. But lucky for us, our nominee in the Democratic Party, she has not just surpassed all of that, she has leapt over that with leaps and bounds. She really is an exceptional candidate. But that being the case, I think it's really important that as attorneys, that each and every one of you are out there and combating the misinformation, and the disinformation that you're going to be hearing all over the place. And the saddest part about these last several years in the 2020 election and the time that Trump was in office and since that time is that I think like every lawyer joke that we've ever heard has unfortunately now become, you know, much more accurate than it's been in the past, because I really take great pride in my law license. And it's why I don't risk my law license by going out and going into a court of law and intentionally submitting pleadings or making arguments that are not based on facts, that are not based on the law. We all had to take an oath of office, right? And we took that oath really, really seriously. Fun fact, by the way, here in Michigan, our top 3 executive office holders, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, myself, and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, were all licensed attorneys. So just pointing that out for all of you who are on here, when you get done helping us win the 2024 election, maybe run for governor or AG or Secretary of State in your respective states. Yeah, I think lady lawyers make fantastic executives. But beyond that, I was talking about something else. All right, I was talking about what we're going to do as lawyers. Here's something really incredibly important. You are going to see arguments in court that are ridiculous made by Trump lawyers. We saw it last time, and we're going to see it again. You know why? Because a lot of those people are still out practicing, even many of them that are actually charged with election crimes, which I know is insane and not something we thought that we would ever see in our lives, but here it is and it's happening. So it's up to you all as attorneys to correct the record in your respective communities. What does that mean? That means getting out there and talking to your friends and your family and your neighbors and people that you just know and saying, hey, I'm following this. This is a bunch of bunk. You know, this is not the way the legal system should work. And these arguments are frivolous. These arguments are vexatious. And, you know, making sure that people really understand the practice of law and don't get confused by, you know, the Rudy Giuliani's of the world, the Sidney Powell's of the world, you know, people who have unfortunately really, I think, just stained our profession. And it's up to us, the rest of us, to be good attorneys and to make sure that people understand, you know, what should and should not happen in a court of law. But again, there's going to be a lot of disinformation out there, and a lot of it is going to happen intentionally. And I will say we just had an issue today where, you know, mysteriously check marks disappeared from a lot of elected officials' accounts on X. And that, you know, included myself, it included our Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, it included a lot of other state electeds. And so what I'm saying is it's up to all of you to, you know, direct people in the right places so they know where to seek information that is correct about voting. We don't want people to be deterred from voting because they don't know where to look for accurate information. So it's up to you to steer people in that direction. And please, 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 and you've heard this before, and I'm going to say it again now, please make sure that you are volunteering to be poll workers. It is critically important that you are working at the polls, and no one better to do it than people who have a law license, right? Critically important. And I'll say this one last thing, and then I'll kick it back. Please make sure that you are contacting literally every single person in your contact list, every single one, to make sure that they have a plan to vote, they know how they're voting, and that they actually are voting, and chase them. You know, make sure that it's not enough to say that they are going to vote. Make sure you're chasing them to make sure they did vote. And find some people in your contact list that will then contact other people individually. Nothing works better than having somebody you personally know, you know, vouch for somebody, talk about why it's so important to vote for Harris for president, and of course, Governor Walz for vice president, and make sure that you're passing it along. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. Thank you so much for having me. And let's get out there and let's do this. We absolutely have to win this election. With all your help, we definitely will. So thanks.
Thank you so much, AG Nussel. Amazing words. You know, disinformation is one of the pieces of voter protection that gets overlooked a lot, but in my opinion, it is one of the foundations of making sure that we restore voter confidence. And with that, I am going to pass it off to one of our featured speakers, Congresswoman Katie Porter.
All right, hello. I'm coming to you from the home state of Kamala Harris, the state that gave us our fearless vice president, and where our next president is coming from. I'm sitting here in California, and I want to talk to you about something. As addition to being lawyers, many of us are mothers and aunts and stepmoms and grandmothers, and so a lot of us have had to hear. I'm sitting here with my daughter, Betsy, and a lot of us have had to hear about Taylor Swift. And Mom, take me to Taylor Swift. Why can't we spend $1,000 to go to Taylor Swift? Hello, I'm in public service. And we've heard about the Eras Tour and the amazing things that have happened in the Eras Tour. So we've all struggled to get tickets to the Eras Tour. And today, your donation to the Harris Walz campaign, you are getting a free ticket to the Eras Tour Kamala's version. That's right. You all get a free ticket to the Eras Tour's Kamala's version. So we're going to talk about some of the eras that I have seen Kamala in and some of the amazing things that she has accomplished. Let me start with Fearless. The Fearless era, when Kamala was Attorney General. I got to know her when she walked away from the negotiating table with the nation's 5 largest banks, essentially telling Wall Street, what you're offering is not good enough. Not good enough for California, not good enough for the people that you've hurt, not good enough for her standard of justice and fairness. That took a lot of courage. She was a newly elected Attorney General. She was one of the youngest people in the room. She was one of the people of color in the room, and she showed that courage. The settlement, the help that people got during the foreclosure crisis, and most importantly, the changes to the bank's practices in which they stopped cheating consumers, really came about because Kamala was fearless. And so I just cannot say enough about having seen her firsthand. When push comes to shove, she knows who's going to be doing the shoving, and it's going to be her, and it's an amazing thing to see. So her track record on accountability, her willingness to show courage, is something that is an amazing thing to have seen, and it's something that she carries forward with her as she goes into her next era. Reputation. I want to talk about Kamala the senator. I want to take you back to when Kamala was questioning Brett Kavanaugh. Anyone love that moment? I loved that moment. When Kamala, and it was so inspiring for me. People ask me, how did I learn how to question like I do of witnesses? Hello? I learned from Kamala when she questioned Brett Kavanaugh to name a law that regulated, that controlled, that invaded sort of women's bodies in the same way, men's bodies in the same way that the law was invading women's. She understood what was at stake in that moment, and that we needed to be tough. We needed not to be cowed. We needed to fight back. And she understood what we had lost in the Donald Trump moment, and the ways in which our reputations, our ability to be our best authentic selves were being diminished by Trump, by his presidency, and by the people he empowered, including folks like Brett Kavanaugh. All right, third and last era for Kamala, Speak Now, my personal favorite album, although my favorite song is Bejeweled. Speak Now era. This is her presidential era. This is her moment on stage, shaking hands, firing up crowds, energizing Americans, Democrats, but all Americans. We're seeing tremendous support for Kamala from independents and no party preference voters and Republicans who just don't want to deal with Donald Trump. We are seeing her ability to rally a crowd. I saw this firsthand when Kamala came to Orange County for me when I was my first race, flipping a Republican-held seat. She helped me become the first Democrat to represent that part of Orange County since the 1940s. And it was her ability to take the stage and rally the crowd that helped power me and so many of us over the finish line in 2018. It is amazing to hear her speak on so many important issues, from abortion to housing. These are issues that she understands, not just that they're important, but how they are important to us. And it's her voice and her ability to use her voice that I think is incredible. So Kamala, in your fearless era, in your reputation era, in your speak now era, it has just been amazing and so inspiring for me personally to see what she can accomplish. Now, as I wrap up, I just want to say a word about you, me, Betsy, everyone else on this call. What eras do we need to be in between now and Election Day? Tonight, you are in your donor era. So whip out your checkbook, your credit card, whatever you've got. We are so close to breaking another fundraising record. Please, 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 you are in your donor era tonight. The money you give today goes farther than the money you give in a month. So dig deep now, because this is the most important time. Second era you need to move into right after you're done writing as big of a check or as big of a donation as you can. I need you to be in your activist era. I need you to be making those connections that you heard Attorney General Nessel talking about. You need to be reaching out to groups, figuring out, how am I going to be active in this election? What networks? Whether it's going to be Indivisible, whether it's going to be with your local union if you're a member. Activist era, very, very important. Make a plan for how you are going to be active and start now. Lawyers, we make wonderful organizers, especially as women lawyers, especially as moms. We know how to do it all at the same time. And that is what we're going to have to do in this rush toward Election Day. Fourth era for you. And don't try to weasel out of this era, because I am watching you. I have a whiteboard and I am not afraid to use it on your ass. The canvasser era. You must knock doors. If you are physically able to knock doors, then knock doors. If you can't, then call or text. But I'm telling you, when you knock that door, you knock loud, be proud. We are out here with an important message. The ask is the task. I have all these little helpful phrases to help you remember. You need to knock on those doors and ask people if they will support Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. It's really, really important that we have those boots on the ground, and your House candidates, your Senate candidates, your city council candidates, your library board candidates, they need you on those doors too. And finally, of course, your voter era. Don't forget, in all of the excitement, to make sure that you and your family take the time to vote. So donor era tonight, activist era tomorrow, canvasser era every day you possibly can, from Labor Day to Election Day, and then the voter era. Thank you so much for letting me be part of this call. I'm so grateful to be on with such an amazing, incredible community tonight of lawyers, women lawyers who are supporting Kamala Harris. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. I don't know if you noticed, but I have my my Tortured Poets Department Female Rage the Musical right here. So that spoke to me in so many ways. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're gonna make up some time. We're gonna talk to another amazing, just everyday attorney. Oh, and her cat. Speaking of Taylor Swift. So this is Kim Allen. She is the executive director and founder of an amazing organization called Power the Vote that helps voter protection departments like the one that I was in charge of, and like one in Georgia, and she can tell you all about it, but helps fund these departments so that they can work year round, not just during the election cycles when voter protection departments tend to get propped up 2 or 3 months before the election, but so that people who really love voter protection can dig in and do the long-term structural building work that will continue to advance the ball for so many of our states where it is almost impossible to easily access a ballot. So Kim, why don't you tell us just a little bit about what Power the Vote does and why you, as a full-time working attorney, decided to create an organization to help out people like me?
Thanks, Jenna. I just wanted to say that my name is Kim. I'm here today as a very proud childless cat lady for Kamala Harris. So I have my cat Oscar here. I am the co-founder of an organization called Power the Vote, and our mission is to fund voter protection staff members at state Democratic parties, folks who are on the front lines fighting for voters day in and day out. And I want to challenge you to think about what it is that you can be doing this year and join in and support one of these voter protection programs in a state near you. Back in 2020, I asked myself two questions. I said, if not now, then when? And if not me, then who? And those questions led me to take a leave of absence from my law firm job to work at the voter protection team at the Democratic Party of Georgia with Syra Draper, who's on this call. And that decision was truly the very best thing I ever did. And it was such an amazing antidote to me for the concern, the darkness, the just the angst that I was feeling around Trump's presidency, and that still carries me today. So it was just so powerful for me to find an outlet for my legal talents that also would work for voters and help to secure our democracy. So strongly encourage you to consider volunteering in voter protection. If we all do our part this year, then we will win this.
Thank you so much, Kim. And we will circulate some more information about Power the Vote if you would like to check them out or get involved with them. Amazing organization that helps employ tons of Democratic activists to do voter protection work, which is so amazing. So I want to give a donation update. We've been trying to catch up a little bit after getting all of this amazing information. So I have failed to update anybody. Last time I checked, we had received a $25,000 donation from Valerie Vanneman. So I would like to challenge us that by the end of my little chat here with Ann Johnson, if we can again double that $10,000 and really step up like Valerie did for us, so that we can make sure that we are powering these huge voter protection departments in these states that desperately need it to make sure that every eligible American can cast a ballot that counts. All right, go to the chat. Links are there, www.womenlawyersforharris24.com. All right, Representative Johnson, it is so nice to see you again. Thank you so much. Also, love the glass.
Of course, glad to be with you guys. Thank you, Jenna.
Absolutely. Well, one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on was to tell us a little bit about how interesting your first ledge session was in Texas when voting rights were on the chopping block.
Yes, I've served 2 terms in Texas now, and it was a whirlwind from in the 87th, getting there right after the 2020 election, right after Texas again was discussed as being able to go blue and turn blue, and seeing incredible enthusiasm in Harris County. The support of the community, the support of the local clerk that made it easier for people to vote, expanding things like drive-through voting, expanding 24 access to voting, which made such a big difference for folks that worked in the medical center, folks that worked off hours, labor that worked overnight, that they could go and vote and have their voices heard. Well, that scared the hell out of Republicans. And so they came in 2021 and were just hell-bent on getting what ultimately became Senate Bill 1 passed, which is, again, additional vote suppression and voter restrictions. I see some of my colleagues on here. I know Representative Jessica Gonzalez, Chairwoman Nicole Collier. There were 57 Democrats that at the end of the regular session and in the first special session took that stand to break quorum. Many of you may remember, and going to DC to highlight the fact that in Texas, we're now hearing about Project 2025. People are afraid of what's coming for Project 2025, but I can tell you, we know it all too well because we've been living it here in Texas already.
Absolutely. Project 2025 is terrifying.
It is. What we've seen in Texas, the restrictions on women's health care, our abortion access. Texas has the most restrictive abortion law in the state. We have the highest rate of uninsured children. We have the highest rate of maternal mortality and morbidity for women. We're having trouble getting our local Republican leadership just to allow us to accept federal dollars to give children food in schools. I mean, the cruelty is the point, but women and children feel it more than anybody else. And that's why I am so excited about where we are in this moment of our nation and the fact that we can finally break that glass ceiling and get Kamala Harris elected as our first female president.
I 100% agree. One final question. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a lawyer, be a partner, be a regular human being and do all the regular human being things, but also have this extra thing that you
So as a state rep in
do on the
Texas,
side.
we're
For us, it's running the state of Texas.
yeah, so in Texas, we are part-time state reps. We all have other jobs. I do have a job as a lawyer. I'm your former chief human trafficking prosecutor in Harris County, Texas. In 2007, I was appointed to represent a 13-year-old little girl who was charged with prostitution. I believe that that was wrong. Got it all the way to the Texas Supreme Court, and to the shock of the nation, Texas was the first state to say, look, these kids are victims. We will protect them and go after their exploiters. And so I have seen it on the ground here in Texas as a woman, as a lawyer, going to bat and voicing the concerns of everybody and finding an avenue to win. But I will tell you that avenue really is in our courts. And so we all may know as lawyers, and you may remember that phrase that you hear, the first thing we do is let's kill all the lawyers. It's usually said as a joke, but it is actually something that we should take with great pride, because we know that that comes from Shakespeare in a play where the person that said it is the bad guy, and is the bad guy on behalf of a coup, an attempt against the king in trying to take over the people. And they say, in order to prevail in eradicating society, what you got to do is take away the very defenders of justice. And so that is us as women, as lawyers. And so you've heard it tonight. If you can donate money, donate money. I know, Jenny, you put out that call that we were going to get a new goal. We had to do it by the time you and I were done. So please, please donate, hit that link again, even if you gave something small, so that we can make that goal. Because just as has been said, early money is seed money, and seed money grows into more money for later, and late money is just that. It's late. And so we are already into this election cycle. Remember, in Texas, the enthusiasm around Taylor Swift, the enthusiasm with young people to say, I want to get out there and vote. We, as the older women, the lawyers, have to remind them, Texas, again, has made a restriction. You don't get to just register on your phone. You don't get to just show up same day. If you're in Texas, you got to register by October 7th. You have to find a voter registrar. And so tell every young woman, every young person working in your law firm, in your court system, when you go get your Starbucks, are you registered to vote? You got to do it by October 7th. You got to go to votetexas.gov to find a voter registrar. And then we get to show up on election day in November, canvass, donate, vote. We always hear it. This is the most important election in our lifetime. And again, it is. But this is the time that we get to blast through that glass ceiling that Hillary put all those cracks in, and make sure that Kamala Harris, and of course the happy warrior Tim Walz, of which we get to be the warriors in the courtroom, at the polls, and registering people to get out and vote, we get to be part of it. So let's get it done in November.
Thank you so much, Representative Johnson. I am going to pass it very shortly to Representative Jessica Gonzalez. But first, I want to give you an update. Y'all, we are, at my last update, up to $60,000 for the evening. That is amazing. We have hit our doubling goals every time I've called it out. So let's do it again. Representative Gonzalez is going to talk for about 10 minutes. So about 10 minutes.
I'm giving you creds for the work that
bring
you
in another $10,000.
I'm so excited to be here with all of you guys. Good evening, my lawyers, my women lawyers, abogadas. Look, what my colleague Ann Johnson said. Yes, we have. It's been very difficult for folks like us who identify as part of the LGBT community. I'm thankful that, we have very great brains like Ann Johnson, her prosecutor brain that can bring it to the table. and all the very smart women that we have in the Texas Ledge that can bring that fight. You know, I in thinking about what the message, I guess, that I wanted to, you know, we're all lawyers, we're all stressed out all the time. But you know, I just came back from a family vacation, and so, you know, part of what I guess I've been thinking about is how we message to our younger people, right? And what our work that we've done as lawyers, because we all chose to be lawyers for a certain reason, because we care about people, because we want to work, because we want to make the lives of people better. And so, you know, and so that's kind of where where my brain is. But look, I am thrilled to be here with all of you, wonderful, smart women, fellow Texans, Ann Johnson, Jasmine Crockett, my colleagues who I know have been in the fight with us in the Texas House. But the moment that we're living in right now has left me more inspired than ever. That's why I talked to you about my conversations with my nephews, the voters that feel like that their vote doesn't matter, because we gotta think about those things. And so I am so proud to represent for a third term, going on an undefeated fourth, the area, you know, parts of Dallas and Grand Prairie. But before I ran in 2018, you know, before I helped start the LGBTQ caucus in the Texas House, before I had an opportunity to bring national attention on the assault of our voting rights in 2021, I was an attorney, just like all of you. And we all know how hard it is sometimes to get where we want to be. And all of us on this call know that this trade that we've dedicated our lives to can be a very hard one, especially as a woman. We have all worked hard to overcome our structural barriers in our careers and in our daily lives. We all know that, in every aspect of what we do. And in my personal experience from being in my career, and I know that it mirrors a lot of women that are on this call. It's not easy, you know, and then sometimes our presence in a courtroom isn't always clear to our male peers, you know. And I'm sure that some of you can relate to that when I would walk into a courtroom as a young lawyer, I was never a lawyer. I was an interpreter, and that happened for a while. Or I was a translator, like a court reporter, or I was a defendant, but never a lawyer. And I know that many of you have experienced that, and just how tough it is to be. But we're strong, and that's where we're all here tonight. Is that we don't let anybody get us down. But we've all experienced these things, and more women are joining our profession every single day. And we all encourage young women to join our profession because we have to. We need different minds to join our profession. This conversation. But at the same time, I mean, I'm filled with inspiration and hope for our future. Again, when I said that I talked to my nephews recently on this, we had a family cruise, and I didn't realize how much these young kids actually care. We were just missing the mark on communicating with them on what they actually care about. But I'm equally worried about where we are now, and I'm worried because I know that we all know what's at stake here. And just like a lot, you know, millions of grandmothers, aunts like myself, I'm not a mother, but I'm an aunt, across Texas, we know what's at stake this November. And we know that women are the ones that bring it home. You know, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and their cronies like Greg Abbott and Ted Cruz have made America more dangerous for women. We all know all those things. They do it by dismantling Roe v. Wade and sacking, you know, the Supreme Court with women haters. They've cleared the way for state for states to pass these draconian abortion bans. In Texas, as Ann Johnson can vouch for, my colleague, our own Republican colleagues in the legislature have proposed criminal penalties for women that have abortions. Criminal penalties. They want to give them the death penalty. And the Texas Republican Party, their leaders have expressed support for all of this. This is where women are in the state of Texas. This is where we are. And this is what this is why we fight. And this is what we all have to fight. But it hasn't been this dangerous to be a woman in America in a very, very long time. I think that we can all agree with that. And I think that we all fear about, what that means for us, what that means for your daughters, what that means for your nieces, what that means for anybody. In not only in Texas, because I'm in Texas, but for across our country. And they're powerful donors. They just make it more difficult for us to not hold them accountable. And look, and I speak to you, and so I definitely want to speak to you as a lawyer, because I am a lawyer. And I do have to say that, and especially in states like Texas, I mean, they want to they've been attacking our rights for plaintiffs. They want to attack our right to practice, to make it harder for us to bring rights, to allow people to have access to our justice system, which is why we went to law school, which is why a lot of us even wanted to go to law school, because we want to help people. And so it's just a very dangerous situation where we are. And unfortunately, we have these powerful donors that come in, but I know that when we were fighting for our voter protection rights, when I was vice chair of the elections committee in the Texas House last session, and I faced those situations where I was disrespected, where I wasn't listened to, I relied on my sisters. I relied, and that's not to say that we all have to work together, but it's that sisterhood, because we know that we have been left behind for so long. And I really wish that my colleague Nicole Collier was here, because she can vouch for that. Her and I worked, I mean, it was kind of serendipitous, but we worked together to just, we know that in Texas, we don't have those numbers, but we're willing to fight. And we have fighters in Texas, and we're always willing to fight. And the women are fighters. And so, look, I know that we have the power to do this. And I know that people will question it, but I know that we can win this. And whatever amount of money, it doesn't matter whether it's $5, whether it's $1, whether it's $2, that money adds up, and we need our vice president to win, because our country is at stake. And so let's do this, women. Let's do this, because we know that we can make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Gonzalez. Thank you. I made a last minute change, and Indivisible has been great about adjusting around our tech. I wanted to introduce everybody to Councilwoman Abby Kameen. She is one of the youngest council members on the on the Houston City Council. She is also one of the first and only women to have been pregnant while on the city council. She's a civil rights lawyer and all-around amazing person. So I wanted her to talk for just a second before we pass it off to our next amazing guest. But right before we do that, I want to let you guys know that doctors and healthcare professionals had a call last week. They had fewer people show up, through their call, they raised a little over $100,000. We are at 66,000, and y'all, we cannot let the doctors outdo us. It's just, we can't do that. So we have been doing great. I would love you to go to www.womenforharris24.com, donate, but while you're there, also sign up to volunteer. Both things are equally important. If you can't do one, please do a lot of the other, whichever that way goes. If you can do both, that is amazing. But use your skills, use your talent. And I'm going to challenge you that before the end of this event, donate what your day's billable hours would be. So whatever your billable hours would be for the day, put that in the Kamala Harris pot so that we can make sure that we can open the polling place doors. We've got the machines all plugged in and everybody can cast a ballot that counts. All right, take it away.
Jenna.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jenna. And hello to all of these fabulous legal ladies that are on. So we just got power back on in my house. In case you missed it, here in Texas, Republicans can't even keep our lights on. But we're tuning in to make sure everyone can turn out for Vice President Harris. I'm a council member in a state that has been one of the epicenters of voter discrimination. So I appreciate everyone for being on this call and being here for our future and for our country. Why does voter protection matter? When I was a law student in DC, I ended up interning at the Democratic National Committee. This was the first year they had formed the Voter Protection Division, and I'll never forget it. It was the day before my birthday, and right down the street, SCOTUS struck down Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act in Shelby County, gutting some of the most effective civil rights protections that we had in our country. And that was it for me. I dedicated the early years of my career to this issue and still remain engaged in voter protection to this day. Republican-controlled states like mine, and you've heard from some of our incredible state legislators that are on the front lines as well. But our state is creating laws to confuse and discourage Americans from making their voice heard. But it's not just Texas. I have gone to swing states and counties helping voters at the polls. I've been in boiler rooms, and a shout out to Nicole Peterson here in Harris County who's listening. We've worked remote hotline shifts from home, answering questions that voters may have. The point is that there is a range of things you and your friends can do that fit into your busy schedule as a lawyer that do make a difference. As lawyers, we are the front line, and we are badass women who are going to hold the line for Vice President Harris, and I know it. Every vote counts, and it's going to take all of us doing our part, because hell no, we are not going back. And personally, for me and for many of you, my son will grow up in a world where leaders respect the rule of law and we get to say, Madam President. So I want to thank all of the organizers of this call, especially special thank you to my friend Liz Hanks, but all the incredible women that are coming together, who are organizing, who are running our voter protection operations. The Democratic Party's voter protection efforts are key to holding the line. And I'm actually personally asking to be sent to a battleground state. But again, you can do this from home. You can do this from your office, whatever works for you. It's my pleasure that I get to actually introduce Deputy Voter Protection Director for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, so the D-TRIP, Caitlin Remmel, who is going to talk about their efforts, especially in swing states. So Caitlin, here's to you.
Thank you so much, Abby. I really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. We're going to hope that my Wi-Fi holds up for this because I'm actually in rural Alaska as we speak. I can't show you the scenery because then there will be no Wi-Fi connection at all. But I'm out here in rural Alaska because one of the seats we absolutely have to hold to make sure we take back the House is Representative Mary Patola. I'm out here in Nome, actually dealing with an election administrative issue right now. Early voting started on Monday for the primary, and there were several locations in rural Alaska that didn't receive their election materials in time. So voting hasn't happened in multiple native villages in Alaska right now, even though the early voting started 4 days ago. So that's actually, it just so happens it coincides with my trip. So it's something that I'm working with the state party to try and make sure we can correct and proactively prevent in November. So it's just one example of all the things that we can do in these states across the country to win back the House. We absolutely want to elect the ticket of Harris and Walz to the presidential level. But if we don't also take back the House and hold the Senate, then we can't get done all the amazing work that, for example, Governor Walz was able to pass in Minnesota with such a slim majority. So that's why taking back the House is so, so important and crucial. I am so grateful to everything that Meredith talked about, because the way that Meredith described all the voter protection aspects, I felt like she was word for word talking about pieces of our programming here as well at the DCCC. We are working very closely and coordinating with the Harris campaign on all of our efforts to make sure that we're not doing parallel programming across the country. So all the battleground states, they're taking aim at, and we're feeding volunteers towards them. And then all these additional states beyond the presidential battlegrounds are states that we are really investing in. And these programs, some of these look very much smaller and very different from the big battleground states, because in some of these states, like New Mexico or Nebraska or California, where we're very invested in holding or flipping seats, in some of these states, there's been maybe a handful of phenomenal volunteers who have done this voter protection work for years, but it's been in a very small capacity and without any real investment or infrastructure. And that is something my team here at the D-Trip that we are trying to do. And so we're trying to bring them tools, bring them new skill sets and best practices, bring them more volunteer capacity and training and all of that. We've got, for example, a great opportunity in Alabama. There's a new seat with a redistricting win. And there's no reason we can't win that seat unless we fall down on the job when it comes to voter protection, because there is not we don't have that muscle exercise in Alabama. So we want to make sure that we're invested. We know what's going on the ground, so we're not caught off by surprise. We're investing in places like Iowa, in part because not just is it really important to flip some of those seats, but also voters in Iowa have been used to having access to early voting and vote by mail for almost double the number of days previously as what they're going to have this cycle, because the Republican legislator has shortened that early vote period. So I say all this to say that when you go to that link that they're posting in the chat, when you donate, and then when you're looking to volunteer, there is an interest form specifically for the DCCC. And what we have, if you fill out that form, you can tell us where in person, which state you are interested in volunteering in. Because many people, especially traditionally for voter protection, people will go to battleground states to poll observe, whether it's for one day or for several days. But let's be real, so many of us, we are so busy, we have families, we can't afford to always go to another state. And so there's so many opportunities for you to volunteer to do poll watching or observe the count process in your state. There's particularly some states like New York and North Carolina and Texas, where most, if not all of our poll observers need to actually be registered to vote in the county that they poll observe. And New York is a great example of a place that we are very invested in really expanding the voter protection efforts. We're also really invested in places like New Jersey and Connecticut, where there is either for the first time or for the first time in a presidential election, there's going to be early vote in person, which is amazing that we have that access now. And so we need to educate voters. We need to have people at these polls to make sure that these brand new early vote sites are running efficiently and in the way that they should be. So I do want to make sure that we're good on time. So I'm gonna pass it on soon. I just do want to echo one thing that was said earlier, which is that it's true, we need poll workers everywhere. There is a shortage of poll workers in this country. People are scared to get involved with all of the attacks on election administrators and then also poll workers as well. So in addition to volunteering, the other thing I absolutely ask you to consider is signing up to be a poll worker, someone who is honest and just willing to follow the law and administer an election in an honest way are the people we need as poll workers. And so everyone here on this call would be an absolute great fit for that role, but that's something that you have to do early. If you want to be a poll worker, that's not something you can decide to do 2 days before the election, because there is training, there is time. So you do need to apply, but I absolutely do encourage you to do that. So please do fill out the form that is in that link that's being posted in the chat. You'll see that there's lots of state options on there. If you sign up, if you say you want to volunteer in a presidential battleground state, we're coordinated with those teams. So we will absolutely slot you in. So you don't have to remember what's a Harris state, what's a D-Trip state. We're all working together. So if you tell us you want to go there, we'll make sure that you get where you want to go. So thank you so much. I don't know about everyone else here, but I know I am so jazzed. And I didn't think I could get more inspired, but I absolutely am with every minute that passes on this call. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. I always love your energy, and working alongside you was so much fun. If you want to work alongside people that have this energy for making sure that people can access the ballot, for making sure that volunteers are engaged in doing things that they love, sign up to be a volunteer. We will connect you with everything that you need in order to be a poll watcher, a poll worker, a hotline worker, somebody that counts the paper ballots, the person that plugs in the machines. And I keep saying that because it's really simple things like that that get overlooked that cause huge problems. So let's make sure that Caitlin has everything she needs, that Meredith has everything she needs, that Kamala and Tim have everything they need to get the keys to the White House, so that we wake up the day after Election Day and we get to scream as loud as we can that we have defeated Donald Trump and that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are now representing us in the White House. What an amazing feeling that would be. But we can't do that without your dollars and your time. So please go to www.womenlawyersforharris24.com. Sign up to volunteer, sign up for either the DNC, sign up under the DCCC. They all talk to each other. They're all working together. They're not overlapping work. So your time will be very well used. And if you're like me and you've lived by the billable hour, you love an efficiency, and this is the perfect one for you. So we have hit 70K. I don't know if you saw it in the chat. We've hit 70K. That is amazing. We have to beat the doctors, y'all. So throw in some more money. Representative Gonzalez, we have met your match. So thank you so much for your match. Thank you guys so much for continuing to donate. We have an amazing speaker next. She is, by all accounts, one of the most incredible people. She was the voter protection director in Georgia in 2022, and she is now a state representative for Georgia. I'm not going to hold you off any longer, but Representative Syra Draper, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jenna. And hello, good evening, lady lawyers. My name is Syra Draper. I am a state representative here in the great state of Georgia, representing parts of Atlanta. And Cook Political Report, great news today. They came in and changed Georgia from a leans Republican state to a toss-up state. And I can tell you that that absolutely matches the energy we are feeling on the ground. I mean, it is through the roof here in Georgia. And it has given me all these 2020 vibes, which we need, because yes, vibes don't win elections, but they certainly help to get the energy and the grassroots work that we absolutely need in Georgia in order to win this election. So as Jenna said, I was the voter protection director in 2020 in Georgia, and I know firsthand how hard it is to vote in Georgia, which is why we need so many volunteers, and we need lawyer volunteers who understand the laws and understand how to advise people in a way that gets them to exercise their right to vote and keeps them safe. Georgia is actually the only battleground state, and somebody's going to correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure, but we're the only battleground state where Republicans have a trifecta at the state level of government. So they have the governor's mansion, they have the majority in the House, and they have the majority in the Senate, which means when we flipped Georgia in 2020 for the first time in nearly 3 decades and sent 2 Democratic senators to the Senate to give Democrats control of the Senate, they got big mad. Very, very mad. And they have been systematically changing our voter laws since 2020 to make access to the ballot more difficult. And I'm talking about surgical precision, right? They have taken the ways that Democrats were able to outgame them in 2020, and they have honed in on those, and they have specifically made those ways of voting more difficult. And I say that because we're going to need help this time around, but we're not without hope, because it was hard in 2020 and we out-organized voter suppression in 2020, and we will do it again in 2024. So I'm just going to give you a couple of our war stories from 2020, because voter protection was the reason we won Georgia in 2020. I mean, we won this state by 11,780 votes, right? Everybody knows that cadence, right? So it was razor thin margins. And I can point to so many things we did with our voter protection program that more than allotted for that margin of victory. So first of all, we had a hugely robust program. We had over 15,000 volunteers. We worked in all 159 of our Georgia counties. We had over 130,000 calls to our voter protection hotline. So these were the kinds of stats and numbers we were dealing with. One of my favorite stories was in the middle of it was like 2 hours before the polls were closing, and we got a call from one of our voter protection volunteers in a very, very small town in rural Georgia. And she says, "You're not going to believe this, but the train is coming through town now." And I said, "Okay, what does that mean?" Well, it turns out what must have been the world's longest train was going through town, and it was cutting off the only road that was available to the polling place. And so people were lined up to try and get to the polling place in their cars, and they couldn't break through because they were waiting for the train to pass. So we got into action. We were absolutely prepared for that kind of scenario. We were able to file the filings that we needed to file in that county. When we were able to have that polling place, the time extended so that people were able to cast their ballot after the train had passed. I mean, they're just bizarre situations, but things like that happen all the time. Our ballot curing program, we had a really robust ballot curing program. We were able to help cure over 15,000 ballots just with our ballot curing program alone, which of course more than makes up for the margin of victory here in Georgia, right? So when I say voter protection wins elections, I'm not being hyperbolic. It is literally the margin of victory in Georgia. So I'm going to move us forward a little bit, because a big difference between 2020 and now 2024 is the interest that Trump has paid in our election administration, our election procedures. And as I mentioned before, this is a totally Republican-run state. So he has been able to be intimately involved with the laws that have been passed in Georgia since 2020. And now more recently, the rules that are being passed through our state election board. I don't know how many of you heard this story, because it's a developing story, but Trump came down to Georgia last Saturday, and he had a rally. And during that rally, he called out by name 3 MAGA Republican members of our state election board. And he lauded them in front of the huge crowd, said their names, and described them as being pit bulls for his victory. Well, you can imagine how us Georgians are feeling when we have a board of elections, state board of elections, that in theory is supposed to be representing all Georgians, all people doing their job in an administrative capacity without partisan bias, right? And they're attending a Trump rally, and Trump is calling them out by name and saying they're doing a great job. So they're not even hiding it anymore. They're not even hiding that they're working together. And this past week, that same Georgia election board, which is now majority election deniers, they weren't always, but they are now, they passed a rule that I think is illegal, that will make certification of our election discretionary to these counties. So Georgia law is very clear. The act of certifying an election at the county level is a ministerial task. It is a mandatory duty of the election boards. And what they have done is they have passed a rule now, they've promulgated a rule, and they're saying that this is actually a discretionary task, and that they should be allowed to investigate and, make inquiry into whether they agree with the results of the election, or whether they agree with how it was tabulated. Now, we of course know that what they're actually interested in is the results, right? Because if the results go one way, they won't have any issues. But if the results go another way, they're going to have a lot of questions and a lot of inquiry, and there's going to be a lot of delay. And so these are the things that we are up against here in Georgia. And this is just happening this week. It is going to continue to happen up until the election. They are literally going to continue to change the rules of the game up until we start voting, which is 68 days from now. 68 days from now is when early voting happens. So when I say that it's difficult to vote here in Georgia, I'm not kidding. But again, we have outdone it before. We're going to outdo it again. We need your help. So join us here in Georgia, join us here in another battleground state. But what I promise is it will be fulfilling work. And we're going to get this done. And we are not going to look back. We didn't like the red Georgia. We're looking forward. So we're moving forward and we're going to do it with you. So thank you so much for having me on this call. It's been such a pleasure to join you. And I'm really excited for what the next few months has to hold.
Thank you so much, Representative Draper. We so appreciate all of the work that you did and that you're continuing to do in Georgia. And I love how Power the Vote has teamed up with the Georgia Democrats to really put together a robust voter protection program so that we can make sure that every single one of those ballots is able to be cast and is counted. And that when a winner is determined, that person will actually take office. These are all things we didn't know we had to pay attention to a few years ago. But now we need more people because of the exact situation that Representative Draper was talking about. All right, I now have Megan Coker, who runs Central Count in Dallas County, one of the most challenging and largest places to do that in one of the largest states in the country. So Megan, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you as a full-time lawyer have decided to also commit a significant amount of time to voter protection and what resources are needed to make sure that people like you can do the job that they have signed up for.
Sure, and thank you so much, Jenna, for having me. Thank you to all the organizers. As you said, my name is Megan Coker. I'm a litigator and appellate attorney here in Dallas, Texas. I started volunteering in part because of Kim, who spoke earlier, and have been supported by Jenna and Rose and other people on the call. As a woman lawyer, like many of us, after Trump got elected, I felt like I hadn't done enough, and I wanted to find a place to do work that was meaningful and that would use my skills as a lawyer. And I found that at Central Count. So there are so many places to protect the vote. Central Count is where all the votes get counted at the end of election night. So I help to make sure that after all that hard work everyone did to get voters to the polls, their votes actually count. It's wild and important work. It's more than I expected. There are a lot of attempts to disrupt the voting process, even at that late stage, by poll watchers and other volunteers on the Republican side. They come up with all sorts of ideas, including trying to force Dallas County to hand count ballots in a joint primary election, which would have forced Democrats to do the same and would have forced everybody to go to their precinct for primary voting. They want those sorts of things to happen on a broad level, but little things like that happen every day at Central Count. So with the help of everyone, with Jenna and Rose and Kim and others, we put together this amazing team of Texas lawyers who are there in Central Count when the votes are getting counted to push back. And to when someone comes up and says the statute says you have to do this, we say, well, let me take a look at that. And with our special skills and talents, we can easily see that the statute does not say what they think it does, and that we are in fact doing things correctly. And in a state like Texas, where the results actually have to be reported to the Secretary of State the next day by Wednesday at a certain time on a preliminary basis, it can matter a great deal whether the vote is whether the counting process is disrupted and delayed. And so we want to make sure that things go smoothly, and also, most importantly, that every voter who actually got to the polls has their vote counted if they're an eligible voter. So, I've been incredibly fulfilled as a lawyer to do this work. I've had many lawyers on our team tell me that this is the most fun they've had in their legal careers in a long time. Some of them have gotten pro bono approved for associates at their firm to do the work for us. So not only is the work critical, but it's fun, and I think we're specially situated to do it well as women lawyers. Whatever you can do would be welcome and is so important. Get pro bono approved for people at your firm, get others involved. Or if you're a public service attorney, get others involved. Sign up to be an observer or a member of the Central Count team or work the polls, as people have mentioned. We don't have enough poll workers who can get the training, follow the rules, and push back on poll watchers who are at the polls trying to disrupt the vote there. You can donate too, obviously. I know we're all incredibly busy. You can make an intensive effort to volunteer, or you can just do a few hours a couple of times a year, like some of the members on our team. But that every time they show up, it's really important. I wanted to leave you with this thought. With our special skills, talents, and training, we women lawyers have power. Let's use it. Let's not waste this opportunity to use it. Get involved and lift up Vice President Harris. And in doing that, we're going to lift up each other. We're going to lift up our children and future generations of people. I know we all want that. We have that hopeful vision that Vice President Harris is putting forward. So let's use that power to make it a reality. For our next speaker, we have the famous Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, also in the Dallas area. I know we're short on time and she needs no introduction, at least for me, so I'll hand the virtual mic to her. Thank you all for having me.
Thanks so much, Megan. We actually do not have Representative Crockett yet. We're working on that.
I am right here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, great. Sorry, we lost you in the panelists. Well, then here we go. Take it away.
First of all,
there she is.
I just want to say thank you so much for organizing this. Listen, we can and we will get this done, but we've got to stick together. We've got to work together, and we can't take anything for granted. So I know that we are feeling the excitement in the streets. It is real. I was in Philly with our new vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, as well as the next president of the United States, Kamala Harris. But I don't want y'all to think that this race is over. It is far from over. We have 89 days, and it means that you're going to have to get out and talk to people that you have never talked to about politics. It means you're going to have to get into your group chats and let them know what's up. It means you're going to have to drag your friends, your family, your cousins, your uncles, your sisters, your brothers, and make sure that they get out and vote, because we know what we're up against. Because right now we know that Donald Trump is putting out all these lies, and we know that for some reason, some people are just mesmerized by him and MAGA. But more importantly, we understand the legal fight that is going to have to take place. I was recently in Atlanta, Georgia, just this past weekend. So we know that they are scared of our power, which means that we have to flex it on a whole other level, because they are going to try to take away our votes. They just passed a law, I want to say yesterday or today in Georgia, specifically deciding that there's some board that won't necessarily have to certify the election. This means we've got to be aggressive, but we won't be aggressive in an anti-democratic way. It means that we will outwork them. And once we outwork them, we will make sure that they will never make it anywhere near the White House again. But right now, we've got to unite behind joy, because that's what we've got on our side. We have joy and we have competence, something that they know nothing about. So I'm very excited for this particular gathering as yet another female lawyer. Y'all know that I use my skills to the best of my ability in committee to get them together. But we've got to get them together at every crevice of this country. This means that Texas has to do its part. We know Texas, we a little struggle bus. So that means that we may have to call into Michigan, or call into Pennsylvania, or call into North Carolina, or call into Wisconsin. We are going to have to do the heavy lifting, and we are going to have to show up in a way that we've never shown up before. But as we've seen, this particular candidate has broken every single record, not for, the other women that have run for president, but she has broken the records in general. That is how strong she is. We can get this done. I hope that you are all giving. She will love to see those coins roll in, specifically from her other sisters-in-law. So thank you so much for everything that you've already done. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And thank you so much for everything that you will do. We will and can get this done together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Representative Crockett. I was lucky enough to work with her when she first ran for office as a state representative, and she has so much energy and so much passion for her community. She's an incredibly creative organizer. She knows how to whip votes. So I have been absolutely thrilled to watch her in Congress. I say all of that because we need to listen to her. She just took us to church. We need to, hands in the air, we need to donate, and we need to sign up to volunteer as a voter protection director. I wouldn't sign up to volunteer for that. Voter protection volunteer. But you can tell I'm getting tired. But thank you so much, everybody, for everything that you have donated. We have a couple of more guests, a few more things to say, but I want you to take a look at the chat. We've had 387 donors donate to Kamala Harris's campaign tonight to support our sister-in-law, as Representative Crockett said. I'd love to see the other 300 of us that showed up to add to that. Give a little, give a lot, sign up for a little, sign up for a lot. Whatever you can do would be amazing. We still have to beat the doctors. We're not quite there yet. All right, so next up, we have some of my friends in voter protection. We are going to bring up, I'm sorry, I've completely lost my place in the run of show at this point. Oh no, okay. We are going to bring up Liz Manella, who is one of the heads of Women for Harris. If you have heard of that amazing 200,000 strong white women's call, this is her. She has been wonderfully helpful as we have put this together, incredibly encouraging. She's got some amazing numbers for us. But I wanted you to hear from her about the difference that women are making, the power that women are holding in this campaign, the decisions that we get to lead, which is very different than so many of the campaigns that have come before this. Women are leading. We have space to take up. They didn't give us a seat at the table, so we built our own damn table. So Liz is one of the people at the head of the table right now. So Liz, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, lady lawyers. Thank you so much for having me. I am a volunteer with Women for Harris, and I've been fundraising for this campaign since last summer. I'm not a lawyer, but I am married to one. I did take the LSAT and consider going to law school, and I didn't, but I did do 1 point better than my husband on the LSAT, and I remind him of that like all the time. So when Jenna told me about her idea for this call, I knew this group of women would hit it out of the park on the fundraising front, and you did. I just got an updated raise total from the campaign, and you've raised $95,000 on just this call alone. That is an unbelievable start, but let's get that total up. It's super, super important because it shows your collective power as a coalition. I always say that if women, and in this case, women attorneys, want a political system set up to serve them, they need to be that political system. We need to run for office. We need to run campaigns, run state parties, and maybe most importantly right now, we need to be the fundraisers that power this campaign. And donating is a great first step, but being a raiser is a way to exponentially grow your impact. So we are dropping a link in the chat to sign up and receive a raiser code from the campaign. This will allow you to have the donations that you bring in be credited to you, and you can track your progress and see how much you've raised. And let me tell you from experience that high functioning type A women like all of you love seeing that raiser tool click up and up and up. It's very motivating, and it's very needed. This campaign doesn't have billionaires in our back pockets, but we have something better. We have all of you. And the folks at the DNC are spending this money very wisely. It's expensive to reach low trust, low information voters. And these next 2 weeks, just leading up to the convention, they're spending $50 million on ads alone. They've opened 250 campaign offices throughout the country. And last month, the DNC announced a $15 million investment concentrated in just the battleground states. And yesterday, they announced that they're building a massive ground game advantage in the blue wall, which is PA, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and hiring more than 600 coordinated staff members in just those states alone. So the answer to will it take more money is yes, yes. So keep giving, keep raising. I always say that in 10 years, you're not going to remember another dinner, another night out, or what bag you carried, but you will still be feeling the lasting effects of another Trump presidency. So it is worth the sacrifice. A good rule of thumb, in addition to Jenna's billable hours rubric, is think of what you would spend to celebrate a special occasion. whether that's to you buying a bottle of champagne or a dinner at a nice French restaurant or a trip to Paris, take that number, that dollar amount, double it, and give it here tonight, right now, on this call. Even if you already donated, you guys got to beat the doctors. Let's go. And this group is so uniquely positioned to have a huge impact on this election, and we really need you. And I know it's not like you have anything else going on. You have families and very demanding jobs, lives and hobbies and self-care. It's important. But my challenge to you is this: make this your personality for the next 88 days. Pretend it's the summer before the bar. Eat, sleep, and breathe this campaign. And then at some point in November, depending on a lot of factors, including our voter protection presence, we will know the outcome. We will win. We will have our payoff. And you can look at those vote totals roll in and you can say, I did that. I helped elect the first woman attorney as president of the United States. So thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks so much, Liz. Everything she said is true. This absolutely should become your personality. When I first got into politics in 2018, I was a volunteer for Beto O'Rourke's campaign out here in Texas. And we, all of the women that had come together to power the volunteer operation for him, we always joked that our husbands were campaign widowers. And that the day after election day, they'd get to see us again and we'd sort of go back to being a regular human being. But I will tell you, every single one of us was changed forever. I changed careers. So this type of work will really, it becomes a part of you. It becomes something that you're really passionate about and want to bring other people in. That's how we got here, is one person who was super passionate about it, talked to another person who was super passionate about it, and boom, 1,000 of us are here together to make sure that we're raising money and that we're volunteering to get Kamala Harris and Tim Walz elected and into the White House. So we have asked you over and over and over again to sign up, sign up, sign up. And I want you to see the faces of some of the people that you would be working with that are running our really amazing voter protection departments around the country. So if we could get our voter protection crew up on, and everybody wave. We've got Kat Lawson, Nicholas Cosmo, we've got Alex Pena, Samantha Scott, and I don't see her, but we've got Rose Clouston on here, as well as Ken Allen. Everybody who runs these programs works day and night to make sure that volunteers have what they need, that they have the physical resources, the physical space to put people in a room so they can run a hotline and run a boiler room, to make sure that they are putting together materials that will act as frequently asked questions for hotline volunteers. Those things, yeah, you see the dramatic nods, the FAQs. These things take a ton of time and they take a lot of resources and they take a lot of people to do. We had, when I was there, we had a voter protection department in Texas of 2 people. There are 254 counties in Texas. That doesn't seem right. So we want these big built out voter protection campaigns because they support regular organizing. They support candidates. They work with candidates. They work with the coordinated campaigns. They work with the presidential campaigns. They work all the way down the ballot. And every single voter protection volunteer, no matter how they get connected to the voter protection movement, works for every candidate on the ballot. So if you want to do work that will work for everybody, voter protection is it. Because when you open the polling place and you plug in the machine and you hand them the ballot, and in some places like Texas, you take their ID, that works for every single person on the ballot. So volunteer, 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 and donate, 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 because these campaigns cannot get built out. Vice President Harris's campaign cannot bring people into Michigan or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or Georgia or Texas or Arizona or New York if they do not have the resources to be able to hire them and train them and put them there. So every single dollar that you are sending our way today is going directly to the campaign so that that exact type of work can happen. Same with Caitlin and the D-Trip. They have an amazing work in these swing districts so that we can win back the House. We can pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We can pass a national law that allows for freedom of women's health care, abortion, IVF, birth control, all of these things that we are fighting and clawing for in so many places, and that are on the chopping block in places where it's even currently protected. So every single one of these dollars is going to make sure that a vote that wants to be cast is cast, it's counted, and that the winner takes office. None of these things can happen without the amazing work of volunteers like you and people who provide support both through time, through their brains, through their skills, and through their dollars. If you can give all, please do. If you can give big, please do. If you can't give today, but you can give tomorrow, or maybe next week, or maybe next month, www.womenlawyers, I can't say this right to save my life right now, womenlawyersforharris24.com will stay up until after the election. So you can always come back to that website to sign up for voter protection volunteer opportunities, to donate, to find out information and voter protection updates, to make sure that you are staying aware of what's going on in this space that we are so uniquely fit for. So write that down. You're going to get some follow-up information after our call is over that will take you, that will give you that link so you can go there. And anything that we think that women lawyers will be specifically suited for, we will put it there. So you only have to remember the one link. But that one link right now, before we bring up all of our planners and everybody that helped put this together, go and donate. First of all, we've got to beat the doctors. Second of all, I want to make sure that all of our billable hours for the day are represented in our pot of gold that we're going to hand over to the campaign. And I want to make sure that we have as many volunteers signed up as we can. I would love nothing more than for us to be able to slide a press release to the press to say that we raised over $100,000 and we signed up 1,000 lawyers for voter protection work. How amazing would that be? What kind of statement would that make to the Trump campaign and to the RNC, who are completely staffed by election deniers and election subversionists? They're placing election integrity heads in big states that love their voter suppression. They're training them to be poll watchers and poll workers so that when people come into the polls, they are the ones running it. We cannot build up counter programs, voter empowerment programs, unless we have dollars and skills like yours. So we are $500 away from the $100,000 mark. Can I get at least one person to put in that last $500? We would love to be able to tell all of our friends. We would love to be able to tell the campaign that this is how women lawyers showed up for Kamala Harris. We are here for you, and this is the best way that we can do that. We are uniquely positioned as well as women lawyers to relate to what she goes through as a woman working in a male-dominated field. She's now doing that under a huge microscope on a huge stage, but we understand what it feels like to walk into a room and to be asked for coffee, to be mistaken for an intern. I've had to show my bar card when I've walked into a courtroom before because it was all men in the courtroom. I followed one in and they just, despite the fact that I was wearing a full suit and carrying a briefcase, they wanted me to prove that I was a lawyer. She is entering spaces that are not welcoming to women, especially women of color. And so we need to show her that we've got her back because we don't want to go back. So pitch in that $500. Think about what your billable hours are. We've been here for a little over 2 hours. What would your billable hours be for that amount of time? Because those dollars will go to excellent work to make sure that our sister-in-law makes it to the White House. She's the one at the head of the table. She's the one building tables for other people behind her because she might be the first, but she has no intention of being the last. And I have a little girl that I would love to wake up the morning after election day and finally, I'm going to get choked up, and finally get to tell her that she can be anything. She can be anything she wants to be because there is a woman president and the sky is the limit for her. The moment that changed my life and changed my career trajectory was having to wake her up in 2016 and tell her that Donald Trump had won. And it changed the course of my life forever. I promised her I would never stop working until I could tell her that we and our friends and our family, no matter who they loved or how they voted or how they worship or what they eat or where they live, that they are safe and they are protected. And the only way that we can do that is to ensure that Donald Trump never gets back into the White House. I want to be able to tell her that we did it and that we did it together. So hit that donate button one more time for us. Hit the volunteer button. Meet other women like the amazing ones that you're about to see if I will ever shut my mouth. You will be looped into the most amazing community of passionate women who don't have trouble speaking out. They don't have trouble being fearless. Yes, I am making a lot of Taylor Swift references, but Congresswoman Porter had it right. There are different phases of this, and maybe you're in your first era, maybe you're in your experienced era, but the women. My earbud just died. The women that belong to this movement, other women to join them. They want more friends. They want to watch you grow. They want to watch you succeed. It is one of the most wholesome, well-rounded groups of people I've ever met. It's giving Tim Walz. If the group could jointly hold a tiny baby piglet, that's what we're going with. So please become a part of our community of voter protection volunteers. And I am happy to say that we just hit $100,000. Thank you guys. Excellent work. All right. I'm going to bring up now all of our other planners that helped us put this together. We've got Jessica, we've got Liz, and we've got Lisa. Like I said, Liz called me a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, Jenna, we've got to get women lawyers together. What do we do? Like, Kamala is moving up. We have got to be able, oh, and Angie, yay, Angie's here. We've got to be able to help her out and take the skills and the talent we have and mobilize them to get Kamala Harris elected. I was like, okay, yeah, we've got this, absolutely. And so Liz made another couple phone calls. We all connected and we were off to the races. With the amazing support of Women for Harris and Liz Minnella, with the amazing support of all of our other speakers, connecting us to other people, providing resources, giving us ideas, we were able in a little under a week to put this event together so that all of us could come together and learn how to do the good work that will get our candidates elected. Liz, I want to give you just a moment to say hello, as well as you are the one that birthed this amazing idea.
Thanks, Jenna. Yeah, everyone who's still on, thank you so much for being here. This feels really, really good after what felt like many, many months and years of really, really bad. I am a lawyer. I'm a community organizer in Houston, Texas. That's why, you know, Jenna and I are both in Texas. It's been a really Texas heavy call, but we are really in the fight. And when I moved back to Texas, I just started fighting extremism in the form of gun violence prevention first, and also voter protection second, and have worked on voter protection, poll watching, you know, poll worker, boiler room, legal boiler room work, all as a volunteer for, I don't know, 15 years or something. And it's some of the most rewarding volunteer work I've ever done. And I knew that if other women lawyers understood the impact you could make by doing this work, and that there are all these other organizers who are going to help you do it, you don't have to be an election law expert in any capacity, that you can feel good about doing that work. And I the whole message about Taylor Swift and what era are we in, I was like, oh shit, I'm in my can't sit still era, because I am currently on a cruise along the coast of Alaska, and was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and volunteer to help organize this call. And I'm sitting in a cruise ship right now, and I, much like Jenna, I have 2 little girls, and I don't ever want them to ask me, Mom, why did you let it get like this? Why didn't you fight harder for us or for me? Or and I will be damned if that is ever something that I can hear them say, because I'm going to work until I'm dead to make sure that this country is a place that they want to be and that they want to grow up. So I thank all of you for being here, and I want to thank Jessica and Lisa and my good friend Angie, who did all our graphic design for us, made us look legit and beautiful. And Indivisible, the team at Indivisible, agreed to host this Zoom for us and do all the really complicated back-end stuff on Zoom. And it just came together so beautifully, and the speakers were amazing. And I'm sure I'm missing many, many important people, but I love you all.
And we love you too, Liz. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to say it one more time. If you haven't donated, or even if you have, go back one more time, donate button. Make sure that Kamala Harris knows that women lawyers have her back. I also want to make sure we recognize the amazing work of Win with Black Women for setting the standard, for setting the example for all of us on how we can come together and really, really show Kamala Harris and the country that we are serious. We are dead serious about this. We're not joking around, and we are not going to stop until we win, because we will not go back. And I will not be able to hear you, but I'm going to assume that you're going to yell this, because when we fight, we win. All right, everybody. www.lawyersforharris24.com will be open and up and working until after Election Day. There are volunteer opportunities that run even through the beginning of December, because there are after Election Day things to still be done on voter protection with counting ballots, excuse me, verifying provisionals, and working on mail ballots and doing ballot cure. So there are so many opportunities available for time, brains, skill, and dollars to be used to show Kamala Harris how much we support her, and that we are going to be here for her, not just until she gets to the White House, but even afterwards. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. I hope you found this energizing and inspiring. Thank you to every single one of our speakers. Thank you especially to Indivisible for helping us coach through the technology side of this and how to host in a huge Zoom, which none of us have ever done. We're all just regular lawyer moms, and we decided we wanted to make a difference. And I hope that you make the same decision today, because it's just the everyday lawyers. It's just the everyday women that get all the shit done. So now is not going to be any different. So thank you so much. We will follow up with more information. We'll have another link for you to our handy dandy website. And then you may periodically hear from us throughout the election cycle to make sure that you have the information you need, that you remember where to go if you have questions, and that if you find other people that want to share in this opportunity, that want to be a part of this voter protection community, that want to be a part of the women lawyers community, send them there, let them sign up, let them donate. And this recording will live on womenlawyersforharris24.com. So you can send it to them, they can come watch it. If you are having a down day, if you have a case of the Mondays, hop on this, listen to Jasmine Crockett and Katie Porter jazz you up. I know that I'm going to listen to that every day. But this is going to be an amazing resource that we're going to keep open for you. Do not stop donating. Do not stop volunteering. Do not stop. We need you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.